Hello, fellow cyborgs, and welcome to a recommendations readathon wrap-up and my minuscule TBR for the upcoming Torathon, or actually currently happening Torathon. So the recommendations readathon was a 9-day readathon hosted by myself and Acacia Ives, where we urged you to finally get to those books that you were recommended, and then you picked them up because this recommendation was so amazing from this individual booktuber. Check out my TBR for my ambitious intentions, but today I want to talk about the things I actually got to. The first thing I finished was Letters to Anyone and Everyone by Torathon TBR. This was a recommendation by M.A. Anders, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. This was a very beautifully illustrated by Jessica Alberg little short story collection in the form of letters between these characters who live in this wood. There's characters like a squirrel, an ant, an elephant, a mole, definitely, a crow, a sparrow, all sorts of woodland creatures, and also creatures that wouldn't be found in a woodland, like the elephant. Overall, these stories were cute, but some of them I found seemed to lack a purpose. Like, there didn't seem to be like a punchline, so to speak, so I was a little confused about what the point of them was. But then a couple stories, The Mole's Letters and Rain, I thought were really beautiful. I also think the half of the fun of this are the illustrations, really. So overall, I enjoyed this, and if my library has any other of TBR's works, then I will probably pick them up when I need a cheerful quick read. Throughout the readathon, I was tackling these 4 plays by George Bernard Shaw. This was a recommendation by Libby Stevenson, specifically Major Barbara and the Doctor's Dilemma, but there were 2 others in this collection that I read as well. I really enjoyed Major Barbara. That was by far my favorite in this collection, so I'm really glad that Libby Stevenson told me to read it. Not me personally, but the people who watch her channel. The Doctor's Dilemma was not quite as good. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I still enjoyed it, and I feel like upon rereading it, I could dig apart more of those ethical dilemmas. The final story in this, Heartbreak House, which Libby Stevenson I don't believe has read yet, I quite enjoyed. It was a bit nonsensical, but a lot of fun, and I think as well held a few philosophical nuggets that I didn't take the time to fully pick apart, but would really enjoy upon rereading. But I didn't enjoy it as much as Major Barbara because of that nonsensical nature. It got to points a little bit just ridiculous. And then the final play is the titular play for this collection, Pygmalion, and I enjoyed this the least, actually. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars, Pygmalion. The collection as a whole I gave 3, but Pygmalion, I have seen My Fair Lady so many times, and it is a fairly true adaptation up to a point that so much of the dialogue in Pygmalion just made me see movie clips in my head, which was really distracting and just not very fun to read. Henry Higgins is also just a very insufferable character, and it was really difficult to spend time with him on the page. And I also felt that the philosophical and ethical questions in the play weren't surprising. I just was too familiar with Pygmalion, I think, to fully enjoy it, especially since I don't particularly love the movie, even though I've watched it multiple times. So yeah. One interesting thing about Pygmalion, though, is that at least at the end of my edition, after the play ends, George Bernard Shaw gives the person who's reading the play like 10 pages of what happens after, so we get to see what actually happens to Eliza and Henry Higgins. That was interesting, but not enough for it to kind of override all of the songs that got stuck in my head. So overall, I would say that this was a success, and I'm glad that I picked it up. The biggest letdown of the readathon was also a Libby recommendation, and that is The Sonnets by William Shakespeare. I think that I might not be smart enough for the sonnets. So a sonnet is a 14-line poem that ends in a rhyming couplet, and the rhyming couplet is often like the crux or like the punchline, you could say, of the poem. So many times when I'm reading these sonnets, I understand what's going on in the first, 12 lines, but the last 2 lines completely lose me. That just goes over my head. I don't understand what's being said. So I feel like I'm not completely understanding what's going on. The other thing with the sonnets is that I knew this going in, but I didn't think it would bother me. But these are all love sonnets pretty much. Or you can look at them from a romantic light, and it's just annoying the crap out of me. I just don't have the patience for love poetry anymore, I don't think. So it's just kind of getting irritating at this point. The other thing is that there's so many sonnets. There's 154, I believe, in here. And so we have runs of sonnets working with the same theme. There was a point in this where there were, I think, like 10-ish sonnets sonnets that were dedicated to the speaker of the sonnet, which I guess we could assume is William Shakespeare, trying to convince his lover to have children so that William Shakespeare then would have a piece of his lover after the lover died, or the world would have a piece of the lover still after the lover died. And not only was that a little bit cringy, because you shouldn't try to convince anybody to have children, like that's a completely personal opinion, like of the person who's potentially having the children, but it was just really repetitive. I'm about halfway through this, and at this point I'm not sure I want to continue on, because it's just more love poems that I don't understand that are repeating similar themes. So if you have an opinion on this, then let me know, but I'm kind of quite close to DNFing this, unfortunately. The highlight of the readathon, however, was a pretty big surprise for me, and that was The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter. I didn't end up finishing this within the readathon, but I'm still going to talk about it in this video because I make the rules. So this was a recommendation both by Leanne from Literary Diversions and Harriet Rosie. I went into this really intimidated, knowing that there were going to be traumatic scenes, and this was going to start off in a really traumatic way, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be ready for it. And this book is pretty traumatic. There is a slight spoiler here. There is a rape scene in here, which really is what made this a 4-star read rather than a 5-star read for me, just because I understand why it was in here, and I don't think that books shouldn't have rape scenes or traumatic scenes in them when they're done purposefully and they're done respectfully, which I totally believe was the case in here. But it just produces so much anxiety in my body that I can't love a book that makes me feel so awful. Does that make sense? Apart from that, though, this was a 5-star read. If this book hadn't made me so uncomfortable, I would have loved this reading experience. This is about sisters. This is about family trauma. This is about individuals becoming new people after traumatic events, and how those traumatic events have shaped who they are and how they connect with other people. This is also about like family secrets within a town, small town living and behavior, corruption. The two sisters, Charlie and Sam, really were fully fledged people in this book, as well as the secondary characters like their father, Charlie's husband. These characters really felt like people to me, and they all felt like complex, flawed, vulnerable, and so interesting people. I could have read a book from any one of their perspectives and just been blown away. This just went above and beyond my expectations as far as connecting with the characters and connecting with the story. It was just incredibly complex, but still so readable and digestible. And it also treated trauma and victimhood, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, just so intelligently and informed and respectfully. So if you think you could stomach some traumatic scenes, then I highly recommend that you pick this up. This has definitely been one of the best surprises of the year so far. So that was the recommendations readathon. I think overall it was really good and positive for me. I don't think I would have picked up The Good Daughter if this didn't kick me in the butt to do it. I think I would have just stared at it and got so scared of it that I would have just given it away in a year. So let's talk about Torathon. This is hosted by Libby Stevenson, and it's running from today, the 19th of April, through the 21st of April, Sunday. So it's a Friday through Sunday readathon. And the whole intention is for you to finally read the shorter fiction that's available from Tor, specifically from Tor.com. So I have, unfortunately, a busy weekend with Easter plans, so I can't hardcore read this readathon, but I do have a couple things that I wanted to just mention, and I mostly just wanted to alert you to my participation, so maybe you could sneak in some participation as well. My main goal for this readathon is to read All Systems Red by Martha Wells. This is the first book in the Murderbot novella series. I have heard Libby Stevenson gush about this. I have heard other people gush about this as well. So I figured that this is a Libby appropriate time to actually get my butt on this. I'm really excited to read about a socially awkward AI murder robot. I also am planning on perusing the horror short stories and poetry that is available on Tor.com. I think there are 35 works currently listed under horror. I haven't even looked to see what is available. I think if I find the time on Sunday or between other things that I'm currently reading, that I will just pick as I go. So I will make a note of what I end up reading there and report back to you on the short fiction that you should pick up as well. So thank you for watching. Please let me know in the comments down below if you participated in the recommendations readathon or if you are planning on participating in the Torathon. I hope that whatever your reading plans have been and continue to be, that you are you are enjoying what you're reading what you're enjoying, both of those things. And until next time, continue to be lovely.